driving trucks is all I've known since I left high school. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. This job, though, it was supposed to be routine, a straight shot through the heartland, delivering goods from Kansas to Colorado. Little did I know, this run would turn into the most terrifying journey of my life. The dispatcher assigned me the route at the last minute, saying it was urgent. The load was standard, but the route, it was anything but ordinary. They called it the haunted route, whispered about among truckers for its eerie reputation. Stories of ghostly apparitions and strange happenings along the road had always been dismissed as superstition, but now I wondered if there was truth to them. I started my journey just after sundown, the sky turning shades of orange and pink as I merged onto the lonely stretch of highway. The first few hours were uneventful, the radio playing old country songs and the occasional crackle of static. But as darkness settled in, a chill crept up my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It started with a flicker in my headlights, shadows darting across the road like fleeting phantoms. I chalked it up to fatigue at first, my mind playing tricks on me in the dead of night. But then I heard it, a whisper, faint and indistinct, riding on the wind that whipped through my open window. "Turn back," it seemed to say, a warning carried on unseen lips. I laughed it off, a nervous sound that echoed in the confines of my cabin. Ghosts weren't real, right? Yet as I pressed on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They spoke of danger ahead, of things unseen and unspeakable. Somewhere in the blackness of Wyoming, the radio crackled to life with a burst of static. A voice, distorted and eerie, cut through the noise like a knife. "Leave this place," it commanded, the words sending shivers down my spine. Heart pounding, I fumbled for the dial, desperate to drown out the voice that seemed to echo from the void itself. But no matter how far I turned it, the static persisted, the voice weaving through the ether like a persistent specter. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the radio fell silent, leaving me alone with the hum of the engine and the pounding of my own heart. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the darkness, and I wondered if I should heed the warnings or press on toward the unknown. That's when I saw her, a figure standing by the side of the road, her form illuminated by the glow of my headlights. She was young, dressed in a tattered dress that fluttered in the breeze, her face pale and ethereal. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a chill unlike any I'd ever known. "Help me," she whispered, a plea carried on a gust of wind that rattled my windows. Instinct screamed at me to keep driving, to leave her behind in the darkness where she belonged. But something in her eyes, something haunted and desperate, stayed my hand on the wheel. Against my better judgment, I slowed to a stop, the engine idling as I watched her approach. She spoke in halting whispers, her voice filled with sorrow and longing. She told me of a tragedy that had claimed her life, of a restless spirit doomed to wander these lonely roads. Her presence chilled me to the bone, yet I couldn't tear myself away from her tale. As she spoke, a sense of dread settled over me like a heavy blanket. The warnings, the whispers, they all seemed to converge in that moment, painting a picture of a place where the living and the dead walked side by side. I knew then that I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding, something that defied logic and reason. With a start, I realized the time hours had passed since I first encountered the apparition by the roadside. Fear gripped me like a vice as I realized I had no choice but to continue on my journey, haunted by the knowledge that I had trespassed into a realm where the veil between worlds was thin. The rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and uncertainty. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision, whispers echoed in my ears, and the road seemed to stretch on into infinity. Every mile felt like an eternity, each bend in the road holding the promise of new horrors. When the first light of dawn finally broke over the horizon, I breathed a sigh of relief. The haunted route had released its grip on me, at least for now. As I pulled into the delivery depot in Colorado, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed something beyond comprehension, something that would haunt my dreams for years to come. And as I unloaded my cargo, I knew one thing for certain: I would never drive that route again, not for all the money in the world. Some mysteries, it seemed, were better left undisturbed in the depths of the night. I've been driving trucks for as long as I can remember, but nothing could have prepared me for the job that would change everything. It started like any other, a routine delivery from a warehouse in New Mexico to a distribution center in Arizona. The cargo was nondescript, just another load to haul across state lines. Little did I know, this run would thrust me into a deadly game of cat and mouse where the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. The trouble began on a desolate stretch of highway just outside Albuquerque. I noticed them in my mirrors first, a pair of sleek black sedans that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, their tinted windows hiding whoever lay inside. At first, I dismissed them as fellow travelers, but their persistence soon became unnerving. They followed me for miles, always keeping a safe distance but never letting me out of their sight. Anxiety gnawed at my insides as I tried to focus on the road ahead, my foot pressing down harder on the gas pedal with each passing mile. Who were they, and why were they tailing me? As night fell like a shroud over the desert, the sedans closed in. Without warning, they surged forward, one on either side of my truck, boxing me in with ruthless precision. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized I was trapped, their intentions unmistakable. A voice crackled over my CB radio, distorted and menacing. "Pull over," it demanded, the words sending a chill down my spine. Heart pounding, I glanced at the side of the road. Barren desert stretched for miles in every direction, offering no refuge, no escape. With a deep breath, I made a split-second decision and swerved sharply, slamming into the side of one sedan with a sickening crunch. Metal screamed in protest as the sedan careened off the road, disappearing into the darkness. For a fleeting moment, I dared to hope that I had evaded them. But as I regained control of my truck and glanced in my mirrors, the second sedan remained in pursuit, its headlights glaring like predatory eyes in the night. They weren't going to let me get away that easily. Adrenaline fueled my thoughts as I racked my brain for options. A plan formed in my mind, born of desperation and survival instinct. I needed help, someone who could even the odds against my relentless pursuers. With trembling hands, I reached for the envelope tucked in my glove compartment, the one I had been instructed to open only in case of emergency. Inside was a burner phone and a hastily scrawled number. Without hesitation, I dialed, praying for a lifeline in the darkness. The voice that answered was gravelly, authoritative. "State your location," it commanded, no hint of warmth in its tone. I rattled off the highway number and mile marker, my words coming in a rush. "I'm being chased," I blurted out, heart hammering in my chest. "They're after the cargo." Silence greeted me on the other end of the line, broken only by the sound of static and the distant roar of my engine. Then, finally, a response. "Head for the old mill outside Flagstaff," the voice instructed, the words clipped and urgent. "We'll meet you there." The line went dead, leaving me with a sense of dread and determination. The old mill was a derelict structure on the outskirts of Flagstaff, a relic of a bygone era now shrouded in shadows and secrets. But it offered sanctuary, a temporary haven where I could regroup and confront my pursuers head-on. As I neared Flagstaff, the sedan showed no signs of relenting. It pursued me relentlessly, inching closer with each passing mile. My hands clenched the wheel, knuckles white with tension, as I pushed my truck to its limits. Fear and determination battled for control within me, driving me forward through sheer force of will. When I reached the outskirts of town, the old mill loomed ahead like a specter, its silhouette stark against the starless sky. I pulled off the highway, tires kicking up dust as I careened into the overgrown lot surrounding the mill. The sedan followed, headlights slicing through the darkness as it closed in. With a screech of brakes, I skidded to a stop in front of the mill's rusted gates, heart racing in my chest. I barely had time to catch my breath before a convoy of vehicles appeared from the shadows, surrounding me with an air of quiet menace. Men and women in tactical gear emerged, weapons at the ready, their faces obscured by masks and shadows. The leader approached, eyes assessing me with a mixture of suspicion and calculation. "You made the right call," he said, voice low and gravelly. "Now, let's see what they're so desperate to get their hands on." Together, we pried open the trailer doors, revealing the cargo hidden within. It was then that I understood the magnitude of what I had unwittingly transported, crates filled not with goods, but with weapons, enough to arm a small army. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. leaving me reeling with shock and disbelief. But there was no time for contemplation. The leader barked orders to his team, directing them to secure the perimeter and dismantle the sedans that had pursued me. As they worked, I stood in stunned silence, grappling with the knowledge that I had stumbled into a dangerous game of arms smuggling and espionage. When the dust finally settled, the leader approached me once more, his expression unreadable behind his mask. "You did good," he said simply, a note of grudging respect in his voice. "But this changes things. You're in deeper than you realize now." With those words, he vanished into the night, leaving me alone with the remnants of my shattered illusions. I climbed back into my truck, the weight of the night's events settling heavily on my shoulders. As I drove away from the old mill, I knew that my life as a truck driver would never be the same. Driving long hauls is my lifeblood. For over a decade, I've navigated these highways, my truck rumbling faithfully beneath me as I crisscrossed the country. But this job, this one was different from the start. It all began with a call from a company I'd never heard of, offering an exorbitant sum to transport a cargo they refused to disclose over state lines. Desperation mingled with curiosity. My savings were dwindling, and the allure of a fat paycheck was too tempting to resist. They gave me a rendezvous point deep in the heart of rural Texas, an isolated warehouse surrounded by acres of empty fields. Arriving just before dusk, I found the warehouse shrouded in shadows, a lone figure waiting beside a nondescript trailer. He introduced himself simply as Mr. Black, his features obscured by darkness and a brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. His voice was clipped, businesslike, as he handed me a sealed envelope containing instructions and a set of keys. "The cargo is precious," he warned, his tone weighted with unspoken implications. "Handle it with care. You leave at midnight." With a nod, I accepted the keys, feeling their weight in my palm like a promise and a warning. As Mr. Black melted into the night, I approached the trailer, the metal cool beneath my touch. The air felt charged with anticipation, a sense that I was stepping into something far beyond my usual hauls. Inside, the cargo awaited a series of large, sealed crates, each stamped with a cryptic symbol I couldn't place. The air smelled faintly metallic, like ozone after a lightning storm. My unease grew, but the thought of the paycheck spurred me forward. I locked the trailer, checked my route one last time, and hit the road. The journey began uneventfully enough, the night swallowing the miles as I drove deeper into unfamiliar territory. But as the hours ticked by, a sense of unease settled over me like a shroud. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and the radio crackled with static, distorted voices whispering warnings I couldn't decipher. Somewhere along the desolate stretches of Kansas, I noticed the first sign that something was amiss. A dark sedan appeared in my rearview mirror, its headlights glaring like twin eyes in the darkness. I dismissed it as coincidence at first, but the sedan stayed with me mile after mile, never overtaking or falling behind, a silent sentinel on the road. With each passing hour, paranoia tightened its grip. Was I being followed? Was the cargo more than I'd been led to believe? I scanned the horizon, searching for answers in the endless expanse of night. Then, in the dead of night outside a small town in Nebraska, the sedan made its move. Without warning, it surged forward, cutting off my path with precision born of intent. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision that would have ended it all. The sedan fell back, but its message was clear: they wanted what I had, and they wouldn't stop until they got it. Fear sharpened my senses as I plotted my next move. With shaking hands, I reached for the envelope Mr. Black had given me, tearing it open to reveal a set of coordinates and a phone number scrawled in ink. Desperation lent me courage as I dialed the number, praying for answers. A voice answered on the third ring, low and gravelly. "You've been compromised," it said without preamble. "Head north. We'll rendezvous at dawn." The line went dead, leaving me with more questions than answers. But the urgency in the voice spurred me forward, northward through the heartland, my foot heavy on the pedal as I raced against time and unseen adversaries. As dawn broke over the Dakota plains, I reached the coordinates: a deserted airstrip nestled amidst rolling hills. A waiting figure emerged from the shadows, features obscured by a hooded jacket and sunglasses. He gestured towards a waiting plane, its engines already thrumming with readiness. "They won't follow you now," he said, voice carrying the weight of truth. "Your job is done." Relief flooded through me as I stepped onto the tarmac, the cargo's mystery still unsolved, but its danger left behind. As the plane soared into the morning sky, I glanced back at the road I'd traveled, knowing I'd never forget the enigma that had nearly cost me everything and wondering what other secrets lay hidden in the heart of the night.